This episode is brought to you by Sterling Soap Company. How often do you think about your soap? Well, if you answered, not much, maybe you should. You see, a lot of what passes for soap in stores is technically not soap, according to the FDA's definition. It's full of lab-created chemicals and detergents because, well, it's cheaper to make. Now, what if you could buy natural soap made from natural ingredients like tallow, palm oil, coconut oil, and scented with essential oils, and for just a little more than you'd pay for grocery store soap? Sterling Soap is 100% natural, and with a wide variety of bath soaps, shave soaps, beard balm, lotions, and cologne, there's a product and a scent for just about everybody. Check them out for yourself at sterlingsoap.com. That's STIRLING soap.com. Are you a hockey fan? Then you'll love Eric Zweig's new book, Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2. It's a treasure trove of untold tales, bizarre incidents, and captivating trivia that will leave even the most devoted puckhead astounded. The intense rivalries, epic showdowns, and historic clashes that shaped the NHL's early years, it's all in there. Zweig uncovers the true stories that helped shape the sport, ensuring that you will never look at hockey the same way again. Check out Hockey Hall of Fame True Stories 2 on Amazon or wherever fine books are sold. Hey there, and welcome back to another edition of This Dish, a proud member of the Sports History Network. I'm your host, Steve White, and I'm not a sports historian. I'm just a guy who loves sports, and this is a journey of discovery as much as it's a journey back in time. So let's get moving. It's July 28th, and this day seems like a great day to be perfect or to break a streak. On this day in 1991, it was Montreal Expo Dennis Martinez facing the minimum number of batters. The Expos were in the midst of a West Coast swing and playing the third game of a three-game series against the Dodgers. Martinez was not overpowering. He struck out just 5 in this game, but he was consistent and his defense backed him up. With 2 outs in the ninth, Tommy Lasorda sent pinch hitter Chris Gwynn to the plate to try to break it up. Here's longtime Dodgers play-by-play man Vin Scully with the call of the final out that day.
One pitch away from a pitcher's absolute nirvana, the pitcher's dream, a perfect game. Dennis Martinez ready, and the 1-2 pitch popped in the air to center field. Going deep on it is Marcus Grissom. He's got it on the track. Dennis Martinez being mobbed by his teammates on this 28th of July, 1991, 3:22 p.m. in the afternoon. Dennis Martinez has reached the ultimate, a perfect game against the Los Angeles Dodgers. Nothing scratchy, nothing fluky. It was a masterpiece.
A few things make this perfecto unique out of the 23 that have been thrown in Major League Baseball history. 1, Dennis Martinez could have very easily been out of baseball at this point. Between 1983 and 86, he wasn't a very good pitcher, with an ERA north of 5 during that span. He was playing on some good Baltimore Orioles teams then, so at least he was getting some run support to kind of balance some things out. But he also struggled with alcoholism and spent some time in rehab before going to Montreal. During the 91 season, the 37-year-old Martinez led the National League in ERA, complete games, and shutouts, and he finished 5th in the voting for the Cy Young. Martinez, a native of Nicaragua, was also the first foreign-born player to throw a perfect game in the major leagues. At that point, it was just the 13th perfecto thrown in Major League Baseball history. Martinez would go on to pitch another 7 seasons before retiring after the 1998 season, with 245 wins in a career that spanned 23 years. And one other interesting fact about this perfect game, behind the plate for this one was Ron Hassey. Hassey had the distinction of being the only player to catch 2 perfect games. He caught Lynn Barker's perfect game in 1981. And this date, July 28th, also holds the distinction of being the only day of the year with 2 perfect games to its credit. On this day in 1994, it was Texas Rangers pitcher Kenny Rogers throwing a perfect game against the California Angels. Rogers struck out 8 and became the first American League left-hander to throw a perfect game. This one came very close to being a really nice one-hitter, though, if it hadn't been for a diving catch by center fielder Rusty Greer to record the first out of the 9th inning. The other 2 outs in the inning were ho-hum, and for at least one day, Kenny Rogers got to be that guy who pitches for the Texas Rangers and not confused with that country music singer who happened to open a chain of chicken roasters that Kramer could not get enough of. Interestingly, this was also the day that the Major League Baseball Players Association met to set a date for the upcoming strike if their demands were not met. 2 weeks later, players walked out, and the rest of the season and postseason was canceled. And now to those streaks coming to an end. One, thankfully, the other, not so much. On this day in 1993, New York Mets pitcher Anthony Young was mired in a mother of a slump. He was both a starter and a reliever this season, but Young had not notched a win in a long time. Since April 19, 1992, more than a year, Young had not won a ball game. He'd saved a few, but he had managed to lose 27 games without a win to break up that streak. His 27-game losing streak set a major league record for futility, but thankfully, it was broken on this day. He came on in relief of Brett Saberhagen in the 9th against the Florida Marlins in a 3-3 game. He gave up 2 hits and an unearned run, and the Marlins led 4-3 heading to the bottom of the 9th. If his teammates could not muster a couple of runs, the streak would grow to 28. But they did. Brian Thompson's RBI single tied it at 4, and then Eddie Murray hit a gapper to score Thompson to give the Mets the 5-4 win, but, more importantly, give Young his first win in 16 months. After the game, Young said, "The guys treated it like I'd won a World Series game for them." Unfortunately for Young, things did not really turn around for him. This was his only win of the season, while losing another 3. His streak of 27 losses had eclipsed the old mark of 23 set by Cliff Curtis of the Boston Braves back in 1910 and 1911. In 1989, it was the end of another major league record that still stands. Vince Coleman was the Jesse James of base stealers. He was in the midst of leading the National League in steals for 6 consecutive years, and he had stolen a major league record 50 consecutive bases. But just like Jesse James and Bonnie and Clyde and Frank Abagnale, at some point, you're going to get caught. And so it was for Coleman in this game. He'd singled off Montreal starter Pascual Perez in the 4th inning. Once he'd reached first, it was never a question of if he would go, but when. When Perez delivered to the plate, he took off, but Expos catcher Nelson Santavina threw a perfect strike down to second base, nabbing Coleman for the first time that season. He'd been a perfect 44 of 44 in attempts so far in this year, and he'd not been caught stealing since September 11, 1988. No worries. He started another streak later in the game when he stole third base. And one of the old adages that you sometimes hear at golf tournaments is, you can't win a tournament on the first day, but you sure can lose it. Well, that sort of got flipped on its head on this day in 2006, when 46-year-old Corey Pavin came out of the blocks firing at pins at the U.S. Bank Championship in Milwaukee. He finished off the front 9 in 26 strokes, breaking the old PGA mark of 27 set by Mike Suchak in 1951, and then it was equaled 3 other times. Pavin would close out his day with a 61 and on top of the leaderboard. He'd keep the good times going the rest of the way, shooting 64, 68, and 67 to win by a couple of shots over Jerry Kelly. It was Pavin's 15th and his final PGA tournament win. And on this day in 1958, it was a brief thaw in the Cold War. The Soviet Union and the United States got together for a 2-day dual track meet in Moscow. Points were kept for both men's and women's events, and an agreement had been made that the points would not be combined, but of course they were. The penultimate event turned out to be the men's decathlon, and it came down to American Rafer Johnson and Russian Vasily Kuznetsov. Johnson had come into the event with the title of World's Greatest Athlete, but Kuznetsov had put up a total 20 points higher than Johnson's previous world record mark. The crowd was definitely pro-Russian and behind Kuznetsov, but when Johnson completed the final event and posted a total of 8,302 points to better Kuznetsov's recent mark, the Russian crowd not only showed their appreciation for the American, but mobbed him on the track in a true show of humanity. It was an unusual moment between the frosty countries and makes one wonder what it would take to get back to a point like that. Time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? Ever heard of the vending machine time tax? It doesn't exist now, but something to think about the next time you need that 2:30 in the afternoon snack. But back in 2017, there was an experiment conducted. Healthy snacks dropped immediately. The less healthier snacks took up to 25 seconds to fall. After a while, people started selecting the healthier snacks to avoid the wait. That's it for today. I'll have more tomorrow on This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, we're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.